Ladies and gentlemen, this is Player 2 coming at you with another build. Today we're going to be covering Deande, the Jarrett assassin, vampire faction people stuff. Yeah, it's great character coverage. Vampires. Yeah. Do you feel it? I'm feeling it. She's kind of like a sophisticated Harlequin. Yeah. Anyways, let's go over her passive. The element of surprise. For 3 seconds after uncloaking, all of Deande's skills and attacks deal 25% additional damage. Damage is nice. Moving on to her weapon, the War Fans. I don't know what the first word is. Don't judge me. Deande's primary melee combos string together a series of rapid melee strikes, while her secondary attack hurls her fans at her foes for ranged damage. Both of these attacks are nice. I do feel that you can really chase someone down with your L2 if you need to. When you don't want to engage someone, you can use your L2. It's tasty. It's tasty. Moving on to her talent, Diplomat's Battle Garb. Deande's Jarrett Elite uniform, tailor-made to maximize agility, mobility, and lethality, and not to mention sexiness. Additional sexiness is always good. But basically, in the game, she basically moves slightly faster than other characters. That's all that means. Let's go on to her skills. You have the Hollow Twin, which cloaks Deande and deploys a decoy with 20% of her health and 25% damage. It fights in your stead for 8 seconds. Upon death or expiry, the decoy explodes for 200 damage. Pretty nice. I actually really like this ability. I like using it both offensively and defensively depending on the situation. So, yeah, some tasty cheese right there. I definitely enjoy popping Hollow Twin because the Hollow Twin behaves more like a player would, and the enemy always does fight them, like almost consistently on a regular basis. They will never ignore them because they do deal damage. Moving on, we got her second skill, Burst Dash. Deande charges forward, dealing 200 damage and pushing back enemies. Hit enemies are weakened, lowering their attack by damage by 30%. Again, more tasty cheese. And I'll tell you how this is implemented after I go over all the skills. Basically, we have a decent amount to cover when it comes to this character, being that she is an advanced, she has an advanced playstyle. Now moving on to her ultimate, Blink Storm. Upon activation, Deande unleashes a fury of 10 strikes ahead of her, stunning up to 5 enemies and dealing 50 damage per hit. What they don't tell you in this description is that it is a wind-up that drags you into a third-person perspective, and basically you have to line up a cone while you're in that third-person perspective with the right or left stick, I can't remember exactly, and then it unleashes these strikes, which in some situations can be very tasty. Again, we'll get into that when I talk about tips and tricks and stuff after we read the Helix. Speaking of the Helix, let's move on to our first skill. You got Double Trouble, which is a 50% dash distance increase, which I think is really, really tasty. And then you have Ground Zero. Burst dashes explosions, erupts in an area, effect damaging foes around Deande. I prefer Double Trouble because Ground Zero replaces your ult with a slower wind-up AoE, or your R1, I should be saying. Replaces your R1 with a slower AoE. R1 if you're on console, by the way. I should have mentioned that. So I recommend Double Trouble. Moving on, All Safeties Off. Increases the Hollow Twin damage by 50%. Or Refined Emitters. Increases Hollow Twin decoy health by 30%. Now, I basically always choose All Safeties Off because I feel like if you are in a PvP fight or if an enemy just so happens to jump in and they see your Hollow Twin, they're going to kill it pretty quickly. And I feel like it doing more damage is more viable. Plus, if you do happen to run up behind an enemy and you spawn your twin, your twin starts getting off hits, you want it to be doing more damage before it's quickly dispatched. So I recommend All Safeties Off. Next up, we have the Blade at your back. Or no, we have Fan Appreciation. And then we have Leech Steel. The fan appreciation only increases your thrown damage, so this might be cool if you like throwing your fans. I don't recommend it because the fans are a very slow moving projectile, though they already do heaps of damage. So I actually recommend Leech Steel. Basically, you can heal yourself off minions, and it can help you out somewhat in fights. You know, give you some of your health back while your enemy is duking it out with you, which is nice. Next up, we have a R1 increaser, or whatever. Calculated risk. Basically, you do more damage at the expense of your shield. Literally, all your shield goes away after you do this. This is dumb. Don't do this. Pick Drain Dash. Basically, more lifesteal. Yum. Next up, we got Silent Strike and Roguelike. Now, I know what you're saying. Right off the bat, you see 25% damage. We should go with Roguelike. No. The reason you do not do this is because 9 times out of 10 when you do this, and I've tried, you get off your uncloak, you hit someone right upside the head, and you're feeling good about that damage. But here's the thing, they get away from you almost instantly. Because it's kind of hard to track your targets at times because there's so many things going on in Battleborn, you really can't get up any of your follow-up hits, and that one strike does not justify 3 or 4, which is what you're guaranteed when you use Silent Strike, which slows them. So basically, pick slow because you're going to get more hits on your target. Alright, moving on, we got to Burst Brawler and Escape Plan. Choose Burst Brawler, damage is always tasty. You won't need Escape Plan when you have chosen this one to the left when you choose Double Trouble. So, do not pick Escape Plan. Next up we have Fan of War and the Culling. Choose Fan of War because I prefer to play a melee play style with this character, and you probably will too. 23% damage isn't that much more to a weakened target, but I could see why it might look appealing, but I still choose Fan of War because that's more versatile. Next up we got Deadly Reach, and we have Energized. Choose Energized. You're going to want to spam your shit as much as possible. Cooldown time is key. Moving on, we have Improved Holographics or Lingering Light. Again, your thing is not going to live that long in a PvP fight. It's going to die pretty quickly, so choose cooldown time. Always tasty. And last, we have a little ultimate buff. So we have basically it spawns another Holotwin when you're using your ult. This could be nice and useful. Depending on how often you get ganked during that round, this is kind of how you'll pick and feel. I think Gathering Storm is going to be best overall, because killing minor enemies with Blink Storm refunds 5 seconds. Or what's this? Is Blink Storm the ult? Oh, basically, if you want to use your ult against minions, this is a better skill for you. So, yeah. That about covers our Helix. Now, let's move on to the gear. 2 ways I recommend building Deande is damage. You know, you got DPS. Don't choose White Lightning like I did for my other build. Choose a crit damage multiplier. And I got lucky enough to get one with a movement speed buff as well, which is good for Deande. It stacks with their other movement speed. And again, Duelist Gloves. You want some more attack damage. Again, DPS. And Scoundrel's Hurricane, which you can get from the Rogue loot boxes, I guess is what I'll call them, or gear packs. The game calls them packs. We'll just use that. Now, the other way I recommend building Deande is either you want to have more health, but what I ultimately think would be my next build for this character is cooldown time. If you have a bunch of gear and gadgets that support cooldown time, go for that, because Deande is very, very, very naked when her skills are on cooldown. Like, you will feel naked, and I'm going to recommend a specific type of cooldown buff. You're going to want a cooldown buff that the secondary effect is an additional reduction in cooldown time based on while all the skills are on cooldown. You're going to be wanting to throw out your abilities as often as possible. This is tasty cheese if you make a cooldown build. So those are my gear recommendations. Even though I don't have all the gear to show you the builds themselves, that's how I feel. Now, we're going to finish it off with some general strategies and tips and basically my personal experience playing this character, because she's very weird. Sometimes I feel like I'm owning people with this character, like I'm just slaughtering people on the battlefield. And other times I feel like they're just handing me my ass over and over and over again. And I hate to admit it, but Deande is very, very dependent on your team's composition. Basically, if you cannot be supported during certain fights, or if your teammates aren't doing their job and engaging in the said group fights, you're kind of useless. Because your job as Deande is to get in a team fight and debuff the enemy while also doing a ton of damage and potentially getting kills. It almost makes her feel like she's an attacker and a support at the same time. So you kind of get this weird vibe. But at the same time, you do feel like you do like good damage at times. You do feel like a threat. But you can't really 2v1. You can't really get away with certain things like that, like you could with Shayne and Aurox, because you have nothing that's really recharging your shields, and your health steal is not big enough. You can handle certain 1v1 compositions. Another problem with that is that you have to be able to land your R1. Again, that's kind of like a Shayne and Aurox problem, but if you miss your R1, that could like make your life so miserable. It's a very, very strange character to play. You have to basically keep an eye on your health. If your health is like below medium, I recommend going back to a station or fighting some minions with the lifesteal and getting your health back. Because if your health is not that high, your shields aren't that, big. So you're going to want to play more around your health than your shields. Always look at your health bar before you jump into a fight with your melee. And when you aren't running in, like say you're not in a position to run in, but you see enemies, throw fans at them. This is actually a great tactic because it makes them think that you're stronger than you are. Like you're confident in the fight. And also throw your fans if a melee character is approaching you. You can beat out a lot of melee characters as this character, but you have to set up the fight in your favor. Basically, if you see a melee character, look them in the eye, throw fans at them. Then when they get close to you, either hit your R1 or your L1. I recommend hitting your L1, then following up with a R1 right afterwards. So what that's going to do for you is right when you hit that L1, they might engage your clone. If they engage your clone, go up behind them or go wherever you feel comfortable. Get your R1 off, and if that connects, just start wailing on them, and you'll have those 3 seconds because of the slow. And if your teammates are smart, they'll take advantage of it as well and also engage the target, pretty much guaranteeing that someone's going to die and you're going to have done something. Overall, if I was to rate this character, definitely not as good as Shayne and Aurox. Like, for any team composition, I feel like Shayne and Aurox kind of bodies this character just because she's slightly more simple and has way better health and shield reserves than this character. But her DPS is slightly better, and again, her ult, if you can use her ult in the right situation, it will completely turn a team fight around by a large margin. So it's kind of like an advanced, she's like an advanced rogue, but she's also more offensive. Like, you want to use her cloak as an offensive tactic, which again is kind of like against Shayne and Aurox, but she's also squishy, so she's just a weird character. I really can't put my hand down. Like, sometimes I love this character, sometimes I hate this character. Anyways, guys, hopefully you'd have either gotten the game or have played the beta, and if you've played with Deande or if you've seen the character, tell me what you think. Do you like her design? Do you like her potential skill trees? How do you feel about squishies in a game? I guess that's it. Thanks for watching if you did. Let me know what you thought about the build.